Hey, hi guys, I'm Phoebe and this is my mate Luke, and welcome to the official Who's Phoebe podcast, where each week we will be discussing the episodes that air on BBC One and on BBC One about Doctor Who. And today, the very first podcast discussion is about the Space Babies and the Devil Chords, and we will also be doing our theories about what they are, what we think is going to happen with Ruby. So, do you want to kick us off, Luke?
Okay, so my genuine thoughts are that I loved the I don't really understand the fact why they did another introduction to Ruby, as we saw that at the beginning or the end of last episode, the church on Ruby Road. But the new music accompanying it, or just going from the doctor saying I'm the doctor and then it ending, I guess we needed a bit more of an opener. So yeah, I think that their chemistry in the episode was really good.
Yeah, I mean, the Space Babies wasn't exactly the greatest for a series opener. I mean, it was a bit weird, and I thought it was a bit weak for a start episode. I'd much rather have the Devil's Chord first than that. But I feel like somehow Ruby's connected in a weird way because we keep getting the Susan name drop, and it wasn't just a name drop in the second episode; it was like a full history lesson.
Yeah, it also seems like Ruby is in control of her reality somehow, because she says I would want to go meet dinosaurs, and then they step out of the TARDIS, and where did they end up? They end up, well, literally meeting dinosaurs. And then she talks about butterflies and stuff, and then steps on a butterfly and becomes one. So I think that she can somehow, without realizing it, she's able to shape reality. And it might be to do with maybe what her mother has. I mean, we don't know the mother, but maybe Ruby isn't a human, you know? Maybe she's a god, or she's some sort
because we
of.
did have that ending where the Doctor drops Ruby back to her adopted mother's Carla's at the end of the episode, and while
Yeah.
she's at the TARDIS, he does a quick DNA scan to try and figure out who Ruby is. Obviously, we don't know what that DNA scan's going to say, but I reckon at some point in next week's episode or the weeks to come, when Ruby's at the TARDIS, the Doctor will quickly look at that DNA scan and see who she actually is to try and solve this mystery. Because all we know, every episode so far, the Space Babies and the Devil Chord, it seems to be snowing around her.
Yeah, it does, and also in the devil in the we'll talk about that one in the next episode, or when we do our next podcast. But in it seems to be like it's recurring, and the Doctor can sense that there's something wrong with Ruby, which is why he scans her at the end of the
But
episode.
he's never been able to do that with any other companion, detect that there's something wrong. Yes, he obviously, with Clara it was different because she was the impossible girl, but he was able to track her back in time to find out who she actually was. With Ruby, this is different. I think for some reason, I think the Doctor and Ruby are connected in some way.
This kind of reminds me in Matt Smith's episode where Amy, he doesn't know if Amy's pregnant or not, so he basically gets the TARDIS to scan her, and it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And he basically finds out that she's not real as well, and that's why he went to that place, because he wasn't just going there on a whim. He needed to find out more about Amy.
Personally, I don't think Ruby's human. I don't think she's human. I think the mystery behind Ruby, her being left on a church doorstep, because obviously we've had the Susan drop in quite a few episodes. We've had it in Space Babies where we see her briefly, and then also we've had her in the Devil's Chord. It was quite done quite cleverly. So when the Doctor's back was turned, she was speaking, and then when her back was turned, the Doctor was speaking. So he hasn't actually quite been able to join the dots as of yet, which is actually really kind of clever. But I think Ruby is related to Susan in some way, and then obviously the Doctor, with Susan being the Doctor's granddaughter, they're connected in some weird way.
Well, I don't know why everyone seems to think that Susan is somehow connected to Ruby because well they recently did a name drop for Susan. Um but Russell only put that in there because he wanted to test if the fans would like it, if they wouldn't like it, and he said that I might build upon it if that's what the fans want. He's just testing to kind of see. So
Yeah, but I'm starting to like join the dots because we've had an older actress come in and be like sort of like see Susan occasionally, and the Doctor has no idea what happened to Susan like after the Time War, and then he assumed she died with the rest of the Time Lords, so we have no idea knowing what's happened to her. Maybe she escaped.
I mean, maybe, but what I think is that I it's weird that the space babies, because they said that it's got something to do with Ruby, the fact that there are all of these, babies like piloting and doing like really important stuff on the ship, and I don't really understand it because that's how they've said that it relates to her in some way, and I couldn't personally see, like, I don't think that she's one of the babies, or maybe she was born from that station, and the lady is actually in control of all of those babies on the planet that they're going to. But I don't think that Doctor Who would kind of have that like quite basic storyline. It's got to be something quite, up there.
Well, we do
Um,
know whatever's going on with Ruby, it's gonna play a part in this series, especially next week's episode as well with Boom. Obviously, we'll talk about that next week when it airs. But more to the point, I'm kind of glad Russell has made Ruby kind of a mysterious companion because with Rose, it was quite simple. She was raised by her mother because her dad died when she was born. With Martha, she was raised in a nice family, and Donna, she was raised by her parents. So, this is the first companion that doesn't really hold any significance to being adopted. I relate to her in some way with me being adopted as well. So I feel like I can really relate with this companion. I feel like a lot of people are going to feel a lot of people who have no idea what happened to their birth parents will feel connected to her in some way. But she has to hold some kind of significance for this series in some way because the last two episodes are very mysterious.
yeah, I think this inclusivity is really good for Doctor Who fans because, like I said, the people who resonate with Ruby can go, I pretty much like, I'm not really like different to Ruby, and I feel like, I can quite relate to this character. And the same with the Doctor actually, because we basically know that he's an orphan because he doesn't actually have like a mum and dad. Like when he was in Gallifrey and whatnot, he didn't really have a real mum and dad. They were like his, you know, orphan family.
Gallifrey
They
just
pretty
kind of
much adopted him.
Gallifrey just took him in when
Yeah, exactly.
when
And
when Tech brought the Doctor to Gallifrey. They sort of gave him a home, really, sort of like looked
they
after
gave him
him.
a home, but he never felt quite right there. He never felt quite
No,
accepted,
but
and
whatever
one of
happened,
them.
I feel. Let's talk about the Doctor and Ruby's dynamic because I love the dynamics in both episodes. More so the Devil's Cord, like when obviously the Doctor is talking about Susan and that. There's Ruby hugging him, like saying he needs to know what happened to her. And then obviously we have Maestro, which I found was a very interesting villain for the Devil's Cord. I mean, especially that cold open, which I can't stop. The only thing I was worried about for this episode was it was going to be too musical. Luckily, that wasn't the case, right?
Are we talking about the Devil's Cord? Or are we still on Space Baby?
Devil's Cord. We'll get back to Space Babies in a minute.
Okay. I have so many comments and thoughts and good things to say about the episode. I'd say from the minute go, from the very first second that I saw like the first opening bit, I knew that this was going to be an amazing episode, and it's actually one of my favorite episodes that we've had in like ages. But I can't think of a better episode that we've had that have kind of it's nowhere near it. So um, I think all the four full breaks as well were really cool.
Yeah, because you had moments where, like, before we get to the intro, you get like Jinx Monson going now, facing the camera, and then doing the Doctor Who theme, and then you've got that moment where she's in this house with that woman playing the piano, and then she's like, and then you get that sort of moment where she's smiling, closes the
It's
curtain.
it's interesting because it's like how does Maestro know the Doctor Who theme tune? Like that's such a meta thing to do. Like
Yeah, also
he knows the
the
chords
whole
of the show.
concept of music in this episode was amazing because like you get the non-diabolical, which is like only like the audience, like what the actors can hear, and then you get the diabolical moments like music where only the audience can hear it. The fact he went from the piano into the theme tune was amazing, and then obviously at the end of the theme tune the jukebox is playing it, so Doctor and Ruby could hear the music coming out of the jukebox for the theme tune, which felt to me very, very surreal. And then obviously, I love those 60 outfits though they were wearing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
come on.
I understand that.
But for me, I felt like Maestro was a great villain. Also, Charlie the Toymaker, I'm totally down for that.
I know a lot of people don't like Jinx Monsoon and they don't like the character because they're being quite transphobic at the minute and I don't think that that's what we shouldn't have those kind of comments and this toxic
No,
fandom
I
really.
mean, I felt Maestro was creepy. I mean, that moment when the Doctor silenced Maestro with the sonic screwdriver,
Yeah,
that was amazing. I thought for a second when I first watched it, I thought my TV had gone. I thought my TV had stopped with the sound, and then I realised after the tuning fork went back in the water, it was just the Doctor using the sonic like that. But I must say, I know people are going to hate me for this. I don't like the design of the sonic screwdriver. I think it's horrible.
yeah, I don't like that Russell T Davies has said that he thinks that it's a gun. Like, in what world could that possibly be misconstrued as a weapon? Like, the whole Doctor's philosophy is a sonic screwdriver doesn't wound, doesn't hurt, doesn't maim. And Russell T Davies thought, oh, whoa, oh no, now it seems to be looking more and more like a gun. So let's just get rid of that design. Let's have this little almost like a makeup palette for a sonic screwdriver.
It looks like a
But I
Skyrim light.
mean, it's kind of growing on me. I know that sounds crazy, but like I'm kind of liking the way that he kind of put it and the way that he's using it, like with his hands. I don't know. I do miss the old design, obviously, but I also think that the new one is also like it won't work as a toy. Like I don't think you'd want to own it, but watching
No,
it in
it
the
won't.
episodes and stuff,
I don't want to have that in my collection. It wouldn't work as a toy. Like it would not do that. I just hate the
definitely
way it's
not.
being used. I mean, in Space Baby, you had the Doctor plug into a USB. Since when can the Sonic ever do that?
Exactly. Like I just have so many like notes about this episode, like just from the TARDIS like lights and stuff. Like I saw leaks and I already kind of knew that the TARDIS would be like purple and blue and different colors. But like I had no clue the kind of scale of this episode. Like it feels like a finale. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like when she gets revealed and when you kind of hear the giggle, like the ha 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 ha.
you can tell that Maestro at that point is sort of related to the Toymaker the second you hear it
And
coming
you
out the
can tell how
piano.
scared he is. You can tell because he
Yeah,
instantly starts running because he's like, oh no. Like he told me the legions are coming, and now there is one right here, right now, and disrupting music. and stopping the Beatles from wanting to write actual Beatles music, or anyone doing any kind of melodies.
I mean, Russell did say before this episode aired, like weeks before, that he couldn't actually use actual Beatles music. So I was intrigued because I was like interested to see how the hell they would do an episode about the Beatles without any Beatles music. And I feel like Maestro kind of represents that, because like Murray Gold deliberately wrote bad songs for the Beatles and Cilla Black for the purpose of this episode. Also, I like the meaning of it, how important music is to our world.
Yeah, exactly. It's like during the World War and stuff between the Germans, if we didn't have music and stuff to get us through, we never probably would have survived the war. Like I said, it would have been very desolate and very, very like chaotic, because like you used to have the military wives that went on these kind of boats and stuff that basically entertained the army whilst they were going through an absolutely dreadful time. So yeah, if we didn't have
This
that
episode
music,
definitely did that well, the meaning of music. If we don't have music, no one would know how to express their love for someone or their anger or anything like that. This had such a deep meaning. And Maestro, the idea of Maestro, him stealing music, like that scene where Ruby is being hung up by those music notes, and then a song deep inside her heart is snowing. Like, I had actual shivers down my spine.
Again, especially when Maestro's scared, then you've got to be worried, because he's like, how can a song be that powerful? And then he mentions about the oldest one or something.
Because he was like, that shouldn't happen. Like, he was actually scared. Like, you know full well when Maestro's scared, you're getting somewhere with Ruby's storyline. And then we have that music battle.
That music battle, I'm not gonna lie, it did seem a bit cringe to me at the beginning, but then they really got into the riffs of the music.
Yeah.
And you really felt a rhythm building up, and it was like it was better than I thought that it was gonna be.
Yeah, I enjoyed that music battle between Maestro and the Doctor, and then when Ruby joined in, it made it even more better, because then it was 2 against 1.
I'm gonna throw a controversial opinion here. I think that Maestro is personally better than the Toymaker. Like, I thought it was nuts how she can mess with music and other stuff, but all the Toymaker can do is like, he's got stuff that are governed by it, but like her episode was a lot more fun to kind of watch and go through and experience.
Yeah, can I just say agreed? Because I feel like, because Maestro is messing with music here, she can go to any time and place she wants to mess with music, and yet she chose the 11th of February 1963 when the Beatles recorded their first albums to mess with. What I did find interesting is when the Doctor was trying to banish her, I think that's a really good word, he was trying to find the right chord and he couldn't. So the piano went out into the hall, and then while she's messing with the Doctor, putting Ruby in a cello and the Doctor in a drum, you get Paul McCartney and John Lennon out there saving the day. I feel like that was such a clever bit, because the Doctor is not smart enough to do this, so the Beatles take over and save the day, which I feel like, however, saying this, I was a little bit disappointed we didn't have conversations with all the Beatles. Yes, we had conversations with Paul McCartney and John Lennon, but I still feel like it would have been nice if the Doctor would have had a conversation with Paul McCartney and Ringo, and then Ruby would have had a conversation with John Lennon and George. I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get all 4 of them on screen.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that point. Also, bit of a side note, how good was the new Doctor Who theme? Like, the changes that they did to the title sequence.
Yeah, I loved it. I felt like the 60th was a bit kind of messy. The intro was a bit messy and like experimental, but they seem to fix all that now.
Yeah, nobody liked the breathing at the end.
But One thing I will say, that musical number at the end, oh my god, that was amazing. Because when the doctor
I
said
don't
to
know why everyone's like really going down on it, because I thought it was really good. Like,
I mean, we had the Strictly Professionals in that.
exactly. But do you
Like
know what the
all
weird
of
thing
them.
is? She was talking about Strictly. She was talking about it, and then they appear at the end of the episode. So do you know what I mean? I think she genuinely is rapping reality, and she is the one in control of it. Like,
Yeah,
I think
because
that
like,
she's going to think of her
because
mother, and then what I think is maybe her mother appears in front of her, like,
yeah,
and then Ruby starts to get scared, as in, like, what's going on?
yeah,
Like,
because
who
like,
are you?
because we had that final rooftop scene about like when they see London is back to normal, like no,
Yeah,
like cloud sky, and then the doctor's like, "There's always a twist at the end." He breaks the fourth wall again, does a wink, and then suddenly we've got him singing in front of a bunch of Strictly Professionals, and it was a lot of pressure though, like behind the scenes, like on Doctor Who Unleashed. I'm
yeah.
mentioning this because this is so important. Scooty and Millie had to lead this, like the Strictly Professionals had to follow their movements, so it was very hard for them because they were under the pressure of having to do like the dancing first, and then they just followed. But that musical
Yeah.
number at the end really did add something special to the episode, I think, because it was about music and how important it is to the world. And I feel like the
I
whole
guess my only complaint, right, is that when you're hearing it, it doesn't sound like Shooty is singing. Like,
no,
I'm trying to isolate his voice from the rest of it, but I don't know where his voice comes in. I swear he's lip syncing and Ruby's the one that's. No, but then we've heard his voice in Church on Ruby Road.
yeah.
So I
The
don't
only
know.
thing,
Maybe he's just drowned out by all the other
I mean,
voices.
I didn't recognize most of the Strictly Professionals because they all had like, because they were all wearing wigs and like these 60s
Yeah.
vibrant costumes. But like, what I did enjoy about it was the fact that after like such a jam-packed episode, this was a nice sort of light-hearted moment about the meaning of music, and like the fact that dancing was back, and you've got the Doctor and Ruby dancing with all these professional people, and then you have Shirley Ballas and Johannes, like them dancing together, like, and then they switch. Slightly jealous that they got to dance with Shirley and Johannes, but you know,
Yeah.
who wouldn't be?
And then we get a really weird bit at the end where the TARDIS doors go in and then out again.
The
And
final
the
musical
TARDIS has been
flourish.
behaving really, really weirdly
I mean, I did
recently.
enjoy that bit when they were on the zebra crossing, and it was like a piano, and then
It was like
they
a
were dancing
piano.
to the TARDIS. That was really enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's just like the first time they walked on it, it wasn't a piano. It's like it was suggesting
I
something.
think the coolest bit for me is when like all of the London backdrop behind them just comes like straight out, and it's Maestro with the
Yeah,
piano, and then she starts
yeah. Can we
playing like
talk about
the.
that? Can we talk about that scene where the Doctor takes Ruby back to 2024, and then like because they see the destruction, and then suddenly you get Maestro going boo, and then you get that dark room with the TARDIS and the piano.
Yeah, I just thought that was such a. It's the cinematics for this scene were nuts. Like, I would love to have seen this in the cinema. They should have done a cinema episode event for this. I mean,
Yeah,
I know people saw it at the premiere, but how lucky they were to see that.
yeah.
Because the
Also,
rest
a
of the public couldn't
bit
see it.
of David Tennant and Freema Agyeman relate here. So obviously, Ruby says that the world didn't end in 1963. This is very similar to when Martha says the world didn't end in 1999. Look at me, I'm living proof. You know,
Yeah,
at this point, time is in flux, so the Doctor has to fix this. But Ruby and Martha both didn't fade because they were with the Doctor.
yeah,
So I feel like
and
this episode was very reminiscent of the Shakespeare Code just because it felt very similar with a lot of the dynamics. The Doctor didn't mention Susan in the Shakespeare Code, but like the whole dynamic between the Doctor and Ruby was very similar to the Martha and the 10th Doctors. I think they've got that kind of vibe with them.
definitely, and like especially the bit where Maestro starts to play. I don't know if it's the Doctor Who theme tune or if it's the distorted Saxon, because there's two different subtitles. I think on the Disney Plus version and the BBC iPlayer version. because one of them says that it's a Saxon, like the Masters theme, from the Saxon, and then the other one is a distorted Doctor Who theme.
Yeah.
Because the TARDIS starts like malfunctioning when it hears it, and I thought that the TARDIS would disappear.
Yeah, me too.
Because it would get
Well,
scared
however,
by it.
one down I will give the episode, and it's only just one, it's just something niggling me, is when the Doctor says hide, Ruby's like, you never hide. I'm like, you don't know the Doctor long enough for him to do that.
Yeah, no, that line doesn't really work. He probably wanted it to be like that because it was meant to originally air in January. So this would have aired, and I'm not kidding, that's what Russell T Davies said, but the FFX weren't ready, the VFX. It wasn't as good as it could be, so they pushed it out to about May.
I feel like the only people who would really know that the Doctor doesn't hide is the companions that have had, like, because Martha was with the Doctor for a while and the Doctor never really hid. So Martha, like, if Martha was in that episode, then she could have said that line and it would have been pretty much spot on to the fact that the Doctor never hides.
Yeah. But I mean, even he hid from
didn't-
that because he
sit
genuinely didn't want to mess around with her.
It didn't sit right with me though. No, like Ruby saying that. I'm like, you've only been on 2 adventures with the Doctor. You can't possibly know him well enough. If that didn't sit right with me, I just felt that was a bit kind of out of character because I'm like, you haven't known the Doctor long enough for him for you to say that. It just felt, for me personally, that shouldn't have been included because yes, the Doctor has hidden before. It's like, no, he has hidden, but this was like a massive scary moment for the Doctor and Ruby to hide.
Yeah,
because like, I mean, apart from that sudden weird thing, how good was their dynamic in the second episode?
I thought it was nuts, but again, I agree that The Devil's Cord should have been the first episode that they put out and then Space Babies, because
I feel like The Devil's Cord would have been a better series opener than Space Babies just because of how well it was produced and like
exactly, and trying to get new fans into that, all you have to do is show them that episode. And Space Babies wasn't really like a big, you know, like a proper excitement builder and hype and all of that. And
like moving back on to the Space Babies, I felt that was weak for a series opener. I mean, yes, it was good, but I don't think it's definitely not my favorite. It definitely does not go into my top 10 favorites of Doctor episodes I've seen for series 14.
Yeah.
I mean, Devil's Cord is going to be always like, like my favorite, but Space Babies just seemed weak with the bogeyman, which was actually made out of snot from the babies. Like every time the babies blew their noses.
Yeah. I also think I know this might be a controversial opinion, but I thought that The Devil's Cord was better than all episodes of the 60th anniversary because
agreed.
It just had everything in there, and like the music was amazing. And no shade to Russell, but I feel like he should have written better 60th anniversary episodes. Like the giggle could have been even better. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it just felt lackluster at the fact that they only went to like 2 locations, one being the Toymaker's shop in the olden days.
On the fact that The Devil's Cord was way better than the 60th anniversary specials, just because this felt more powerful to me in a way, had a deeper meaning to it. It was more enjoyable, and also the best part about it was the fact that you could see they were using like Disney money for some real good freaking effects. I mean,
and also I wouldn't say that the Toymaker was scary. He didn't have that depth of field. Like even when David Tennant was saying the Toymaker, like most people aren't really gonna kind of sense, because he didn't do anything nearly as bad as he did when it was William Hartnell's era.
No,
I heard what happened, and it was absolutely awful what he did. Like he created like fake versions of the TARDIS, and he did way worse things. Like he pretty much made all the Doctor's body vanish, apart from like
speaking of the weird bi-generation thing, the
Yeah.
Doctor obviously mentions to Ruby that the last time he thought of God was when he split in two, which is good because it establishes that, because the Doctor said he's not sure he'll be able to survive that again, which is good because it means that this whole bi-generation was a one-time trick. It's not going to happen again. So the next time the Doctor dies will be proper regeneration. So it implies that the bi-generation was a one-time trick, and that's can only happen once in a Time Lord. But then again, I felt the bi-regeneration in the 60th was weak, just because it makes absolutely like zero sense, and like the Time Lords have never mentioned bi-regeneration throughout the show's history. So
exactly, but at the same time, we had no clue what was going on with the Doctor, with the Timeless Child. Like, we never knew all that stuff. So technically, it is possible because basically all the stuff that we know previously have been wiped out the ground. Like, Gallifrey isn't a thing. Time Lords aren't exactly a thing, even though he is one still, which is something I struggle with because that's what Russell has said, that
Russell did
we have.
say that he would be building on the Timeless Child stuff. He hasn't completely retconned it. So eventually, at some point in the next couple of years, we are bound to find out the Doctor's real planet.
Yeah. What's your rating for both episodes then? Because I think
Well,
I'll give.
Space Babies, my general review that I gave on YouTube, 7 out of 10, and that still stands. Devil's Court a full 10 out of 10, just because it was the better one out of the two. And I mentioned this in the review, and we'll mention it again on here as a discussion before we get onto the theories. I personally think that that Devil's Court should have been the Series 14 opener.
Yeah. I think if I had to rate Space Babies, I'd probably give it about a 6.5 out of 10. And then, like you say, I definitely give Devil's Court a 10 out of 10 because there wasn't a moment in the episode that bored me. It was fun all the way throughout.
And also, the other thing about the Space Babies is I know for a fact that every time the baby showed emotions, the actors' voices that were doing the babies made absolutely no sense. Like, the emotions were off key with the actual speeches.
Yeah. It
Also,
just felt quite weak in terms of story. It didn't really have one.
Okay, so moving on to the theories. We know Russell has said that there's going to be loads of like twists and turns in store for this particular series, especially evolving around Ruby and the Doctor, and and also he's building on the gods from the 6th year. So what do we think that about next week's episode, because it's called Boom and the Doctor stands on a landmine? Do you have any theories about what's going to happen next week or the weeks to come?
Well, with the Boom episode, we got teased by Russell T Davies recently because he's basically said that, and we've seen a couple of promo pics of, like, it looks like a big war is going on, and it looks like Ruby is going to have to do the majority in this episode. But someone's random theories on Twitter is that apparently we're going to get something like 15 gets blown up. We see 14 regenerate then into Ncuti, and then he has to come back to that planet. But this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But I don't really see how they're supposed to get the 15th Doctor off of this landmine because once he stepped on it. It's one of those where I feel like it's going to be a bit of a bigger episode than people are expecting. I think because, again, it's written by Stephen Moffat.
Which, can I just say, I am so glad he's got back involved with Doctor Who again, because he writes some of the best episodes. You have to agree on that front. But
yeah,
I'm more interested in the fact about Ruby's role to play in next week's episode, because it seems like she's going to be doing like a lot of like what Martha did back in like the series 3 finale, like doing a lot of the big job of saving the world, because the Doctor can't step off this landmine, otherwise it's going to go boom.
Like,
yeah. Because he has to keep his weight on it, otherwise it's going to explode. So I think he's going to have to try and find a way of somehow telling Ruby how to defuse it so that he can step off safely.
Yeah, but it's called Boom though. That's the interesting thing. Like it's called Boom. Like it's not called Detonation. It's called Boom. So this is the interesting thing of maybe we're not going to see Shooty a lot throughout this series because again he was filming Sex Education during the 60th anniversary, so he was quite absent from most of these episodes. Like 75 yards I don't think is going to include the Doctor much. And
I feel like though in Boom it's going to be Ruby doing the saving, not the Doctor, because once Ruby's done the saving, the Doctor will be safe to step off this landmine.
it also looks like the TARDIS disappears because if you look in the trailer, it looks like it's lit up 1 minute and then it kind of looks like it's half gone the next. So it looks like the TARDIS is going to. This is an interesting thing. Maybe it disappears and then it's like Ruby's got to try and get it to locate onto the Doctor so that she can then fly it, land on him, and then somehow not bring the mine with it. I can't think how else that episode's going to end because at the end of the day, if it was any other episode, I'd have loads of different theories on how you could stop it.
Yeah.
But
obviously, we haven't seen much of the episode that airs on my birthday, which is 73 yards. That's the one I'm more in.
it's 74, but yeah.
74 yards, because that's the one I'm intrigued about, like Boom. But the whole point of Boom is the fact they're in this war zone and the Doctor's against war. That's been his whole thing for a long time. But the fact that he steps on this landmine, it's a bit like that Jodie Whittaker episode with that landmine that went off.
I can't possibly comment on that one because
no, I'm not going to comment on it either.
I haven't really watched any of hers, but like no hate to the actor, but she just wasn't really for me.
But this reminds me slightly of how the 10th Doctor was in a lot of his later seasons, series 3 included, about him having to be careful about like war and stuff, like being against it. So I feel like putting the 15th Doctor and Ruby in the middle of the war is really going to test the Doctor's patience in this one.
Yeah, I really think that he's gonna really have to have proper cooperation from Ruby, and I think it's going to be a very, very emotional episode because I think Ruby's gonna. I think that Shooty's pretty much gonna give up and pretty much be like, I think I really like this regeneration, and I don't want to change, and I think it's gonna be Ruby like crying because she's like. Like I've only just met you, like you can't just give up. And I think we're gonna see like the 15th Doctor kind of be like, the TARDIS will take you here or something like that. Or maybe she has to go back in time. Who knows? Maybe that because she's got a TARDIS key, remember? So she might have to go in the TARDIS and leave the Doctor on the landmine.
You know full well I made my own Doctor Who character, so obviously after this episode's aired, we'll be doing a fan fiction of my character included in this. But I feel like for my character, this would be a great episode because it's going to really show off her skills, not just as a medic, but also as like the Doctor's daughter. Like when the Doctor steps on a landmine, my character has to take charge in this situation and try and figure out a way to to defuse the bomb the Doctor's standing on, whilst also telling Ruby like instructions on how to save the day as well. So this will really test obviously I'm going to rewrite Boom to include my character, like not a lot, but to include. This is really going to, going on to your theory, this is going to really test the Doctor's patience. Like he's not going to want to regenerate. It's going to be like the 10th Doctor all over again, like not wanting to regenerate because he really likes his body. So like it's going to really, really test not just the Doctor's patience, but Ruby's patience too.
Yeah.
According to Russell,
I love the fact with this one you can't really theorize because at the end of the day it's not like the Doctor can just like run off and somehow activate something. He is stuck. He is rooted to that mine, and Ruby doesn't really have the expertise yet to kind of go and kind of navigate this, so she's going to be quite out of her depth. But it'll be interesting to see how Ruby kind of copes, and if she
because
doesn't
Ruby's
just
going to
like,
be way out of her depth here. She's never had to like navigate around like a situation like this before, where the Doctor steps on something.
yeah,
It's not like Family of Blood and like Human Nature, where the Doctor turns human and Martha's been with the Doctor long enough for this point to navigate being the one in charge.
yeah,
This is a completely different situation, where this is like Ruby's third adventure with the Doctor. She hasn't known him long enough yet, and she's going to be so out of her depth and wanting the Doctor's help that the Doctor is going to be so focused on keeping one foot on the landmine and so focused doing that he's not really gonna, be concentrating.
yeah,
He's gonna be so focused on not having this explode on him or dying.
yeah.
But I've got a feeling that the clerics are back, apparently, according to the soldiers.
It'll be interesting. But that's pretty much our thoughts on Space Babies and the Devil's Cord.
Yeah, because if this podcast is successful, guys, and you really enjoy this first episode, me and Luke will be back with... Oh, yeah, by the way, guys, this podcast is not just me and Luke. We are the co-hosts. I'm going to try and rope in a few of my other Doctor Who buddies as well for next week's episode to get all of their ideas and theories for next week's episode. But as each episode airs, I will do my reviews on them separately first, and then after that there will be a podcast discussion airing literally on the Thursday, literally after my reviews have gone up on that Tuesday, and then after that there'll be probably another podcast at the end of the series of me and Luke discussing overall the series altogether. And also, we're not done there. There'll be more podcast episodes like finding out who Ruby actually is. So me and Luke will be back at some point next week after Boom to discuss. As we get more details about who Ruby is, we'll try and do a podcast about who Ruby Sunday is. But if you did enjoy this podcast, please give us a thumbs up, and also
let us know in the comments down below what you thought and general thoughts and whatnot.
Yeah, because we also want to know what other podcasts you want me and Luke to do. Do you want us to review David Tennant's like run on Doctor Who? I'm talking about like 2005 and all of that stuff. Do you want us to review Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi? Do you want us to review some of the classic discussions as well and talk about how much better classic Who is than from modern and stuff like that? We are open to ideas, but I'll leave the comments down for you to put. Until then, I've been the Doctor's daughter.
And I've been Luke.
See you next week. Bye.
See you next week.